So, the situation with your emotions that you're not able to manage sometimes. How
Mm.
do other people that don't understand deal with that? Because I reckon it would make a lot of people feel uncomfortable at the beginning before they get to know you.
And that's exactly the right word, uncomfortable. Because I mean, for example, like it's always the most emotive situations that when it rears its ugly head. So, for example, when I got married, I mean, I've never been so dehydrated in my life. I literally wept throughout the whole ceremony. Oh, and when our son was born, I
Yeah.
wept so much.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gassiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
Hello and welcome to episode 210 of the Recovery After Stroke podcast. If you are a stroke survivor with a story to share about your experience with stroke and you have been thinking about reaching out to be a guest on the show but were waiting for the right time to reach out, this is it. If you go to recoveryafterstroke.com/contact, you will find a form that you can fill out to be a guest on the show. As soon as I receive it, I will respond with more details on how you can choose a time that works for you and me to meet over Zoom. Now, my guest today is Will Perringwood, who in March 2013 experienced a subarachnoid hemorrhage that, amongst other things, has left him with pseudobulbar affect and uncontrollable crying. Will Perringwood, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Nice to be on here.
Nice to have you here, mate, all the way from the United Kingdom. Which part are you in?
I'm in a place called Leicester, which is in the East Midlands
Mm-hmm. Of England?
of England. That's right. Yeah.
Yep. And tell me a little bit about what happened to you.
So in 2013, I was living in a place called Gloucestershire, which is in the southwest of England, working as a sports journalist, absolutely loving life. And then I'd been on a night out with a few friends the night before, and I parked my car bizarrely, really strangely, at an old flat that I used to live at, which happened to be located across the road from my work. And it was so it'd been Friday night, I'd been out for a few drinks, and Saturday morning I thought to myself, oh, I know, I'll just go for a run and go pick up my car. So I went for a run and went to go pick up my car, and bizarrely I just collapsed outside my car, and I was found fitting by an old next door neighbour, which still to this day I've never ever met before, but I'm so grateful to them. They found me fitting, and they rang an ambulance, and the ambulance came and picked me up and found that I'd had a subarachnoid hemorrhage, which is a bleed on the brain. And I was rushed to hospital immediately, and for surgery to have the damage removed from my brain. But the diagnosis was I'd never move the left-hand side of my body ever again.
Intense. When was that?
That was back in 2013, so that was 9 years ago. March the 2nd, 2013, a date that's forever etched on my brain now.
Mm-hmm. And how big was your drinking session?
I do connect the two because sports journalism is definitely an industry where there's a lot of drinking involved, shall we say, for networking, for connecting with people. And I did go out with a very good friend of mine that night, actually. So there was quite a few drinks shared, shall we say. It was a good night.
And then you're 30 years old, right? So you've got no idea that there's something going on in you that might be putting your life at risk. Was that the first time you realized there was an issue? You found out there was an issue? Was there anything in hindsight that gave warning signs?
Not really, no, because when obviously so many appointments and so many hospital appointments and doctor's appointments afterwards, they told me and my family that they found that I was born with a birthmark on my brain and they described it, these are their words, as a ticking time bomb, that at some point in my life it would just go off just like that. and I would not be pre-warned. I would have no idea when it would happen, and it just so happened to be that day, March 2nd, 2013.
Wow. Was it an arteriovenous malformation or was it a cavernoma?
It was called a subarachnoid hemorrhage.
But the blood vessel wasn't described any further beyond this supposed, what was it on your brain?
So it was a bleed on the brain, but
But then what?
but the
What
medical
did that?
term is a subarachnoid hemorrhage.
But what did they describe it as? To
They
you?
just described it as a bleed on the brain.
No, but didn't they say it was something else? They said it was a scar on the brain or something on the brain or a birthmark on the brain.
Oh, a birthmark on the brain. That was it. They said so potentially I could have been living with it all my life, just
Yep.
waiting to go off at some point in my life with a birthmark on my brain. So I could have been born with it.
Yep.
I could have been born with a birthmark on my brain. I would have no idea that I was walking around with this ticking time bomb all of my life.
All right. I'm going to give you a bit of because I'm a qualified neurologist and I know these things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. In my dreams, it sounds like it was an arteriovenous malformation. So that's what I had. I had a bleed in the brain that was as a result of a blood vessel that was malformed, that I was born with, that was a ticking time bomb that could have bled any time and just so happened to bleed when I was 37. So it's the same story that I get from everybody who's had an arteriovenous malformation or a cavernous angioma, which is also known as an angioma, as a cavernoma. So it's interesting that they've given you guys the, I'm going to quote unquote, the dumbed down version of the description by describing it as a birthmark on your brain. It's far from a birthmark. I mean, there's no resemblance to a birthmark, but I suppose it does provide a picture of what the difference between that part of your brain looks like and perhaps another part. But it sounds like it was a blood vessel that was sitting there, and some people have them burst many, many years into their lives, some very early on in their life that can be properly deadly. And then there is a weird cluster of people that I've interviewed that have this issue who were all in their mid 30s to mid 40s where it happened. So that seems to be the sweet spot. And I've concluded, again, because I'm a professional researcher, I've concluded that it's got to do with our lifestyle having ramped up to the point of stress, etc., and a lot of other factors coming together in a negative way to create the perfect storm to give this thing an opportunity for it to bleed. Does that description fit your lifestyle at all? What was your lifestyle like at that time?
I've got to say, you absolutely hit the nail on the head there. 100%. Because, like, it's amazing that you phrased it like that. It was absolutely spot on. Because in so many aspects, like, I was told I was working in a very, very stressful job as a sports journalist, which had been my dream all of my life. So I had achieved that, big tick. I loved it, but it was incredibly stressful. So, for example, at the time of my bleed, I had worked, I think I'd estimated 30 days consecutively straight, no day off whatsoever. And it's a very, very stressful job because you're working to daily deadlines every single day. You're under the cosh, you're under pressure to get everything done. And so to cope and live and work with that pressure every single day, that is going to have an effect on you, definitely. So I can definitely see your point about lifestyle. But yeah, no, 100% agree with you there. I was absolutely spot on. Thank you.
What I can't understand why it's necessary to work 30 days straight in any career. I know that people do it, and I certainly wasn't a person that worked 30 days straight, but I did work a lot of hours and for many days in a row, but never 30 days. So I thought that sports journalism is really cool. You get to go to a lot of sports events. You get to interview your heroes. You get to chase down Becks and see what they're up to and all that kind of stuff. Explain to me how it becomes so ridiculous that you have to work 30 days in a row, because clearly it didn't start that way. Is it
I
you or is it
think
them, or is it a combination of both?
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, I do think, and this is absolutely no disrespect to the profession and the industry whatsoever, but I do think, and whether it's more this country in Britain than it is in America, I don't know because I've never worked in America, but like it does seem as if they take advantage of people like myself who have a massive love and passion for the industry. So no, you're completely right. So I mean, for example, like I have reported at 3 Rugby World Cups in my life, in my career, which I is a huge privilege.
Mm.
So for a start, I reported at the 2011 Rugby World Cup in New Zealand, which was just a huge, massive experience for me. And then I had my brain injury in 2013, and I never thought I'd come back from it. I never thought I'd work ever again. But then my work, I was so lucky and grateful that my work were willing to accept me and take me back in 2014. And they started me on a graded return to work, where they started, well, I'd start by working a couple of hours a week and then gradually build it up, 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 up. And eventually the 2015 Rugby World Cup was around the corner. And I was lucky enough to report on 2 matches at that, which was just a huge privilege again. So that was my second World Cup. And then in 2016, there was something called the Junior or Under 20 Rugby World Cup.
Mm.
And that was in Manchester in England. And I got to report at that. So that was my third World Cup. So even though it was horrendous what happened to me in 2013, the kind of outlook I've taken from it is you've got to look at the positives. And positives were for me that, okay, since my brain injury, I've still managed to report at 2 World Cups, which is incredible.
Mm. I agree. Absolutely. You sound like Mike Smith, guy who I interviewed on episode 198, who was a reporter in the United States, and he was doing ridiculous hours as well, just non-stop. And then he had an issue with his heart that caused a stroke, and that stopped him from going back to that profession because he did not want to go back into those types of conditions. And part of
Yeah.
he was a reporter who was doing the nightly news reporting, and what he was reporting was a lot of the negative stuff, a lot of the fatalities and car crashes and all that type of thing. So he didn't go back to it. But he's teaching now, and he's feeling a lot better about the fact that he doesn't have to work 7 days a week and he's not always on the clock. Did you adjust your hours so that they are more reasonable? Did it go back to what you were doing before?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, in 2017, the chance came up to take redundancy, to lose the job, because with the sports journalism industry, unfortunately, A is quite cutthroat and B is contracting as well. So they're losing a lot of jobs, and unfortunately, I lost my job. But again, I one thing I've learned is not to dwell on the negative, but to focus on the positive.
Mm.
And at the same time, 2017, my wife's teaching contract was coming to an end, and she was 8 months pregnant. So we saw it as a, perfect storm, I think was a phrase you used earlier. And it was just a perfect storm of, I was not enjoying it. I saw it as the cause of my brain injury. The fact we're about to start a family, the fact that her teaching contract was coming to an end. So we just basically took the decision just to basically move away from the place we were living, which was called Gloucestershire in the southwest of England, and move down south to the very, very south coast, which is where my wife is from originally, and move in with her family and have our little boy.
Awesome. You're an emotional fella.
Well, this is another one of the what's called the hidden aspects of brain injury.
Mm-hmm.
Is a part of my brain that was affected. It's a part of the brain that controls emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I often can't control my emotions.
And is crying the one that expresses itself the most, or other emotions as well?
Yeah, definitely crying.
And is it usually when you're talking about something that's emotional, like your little boy, yeah? That's emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a pretty good reason to get emotional and cry, though.
It's
Um,
often my little boy or my wife.
uh,
Those are the two.
and were you emotional growing
Sorry, brother.
before? No, it's all good, man. Don't apologize. We've all been there. I know all about it. Don't worry. Most people listening have been there. And I think most of them try to uh, cover it up or hide it or whatever. Um, is it
Yes, it's this
difficult for it
term.
to express itself in situations where you prefer it didn't?
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, I remember there was a television program which, it's going to sound weird, but my sister had watched one night, which was an audience with Michael Bublé.
Yeah.
And one of the audience members asked him, Michael Bublé, great international singer, surrounded by an audience, all asking questions, and said, like Michael, like the first name basis, you sing and you write such emotional songs and such emotional lyrics. How do you sort of hide or control that emotion being, or how do you stop that emotion being released? And he said something like, I sing, or he said to me like, I find if I sing these things, then it manages to control it. And that was really interesting because one of the biggest impacts of my brain injury has been my memory, particularly my short-term memory.
Uh-huh.
And again, like this, to throw a boring statistic at you, but one that I learned at this something like doctors or medicine have only discovered or only know 80% about the brain,
Mm-hmm.
which I find absolutely fascinating. So therefore, there's still 20% left to discover for them for modern day medicine, which is just absolutely it just absolutely baffles me. It really does.
Yeah.
So how I liken it to is I liken it to so therefore they only know 20% about brain injuries in
Mm,
general as a field, and
mm,
so therefore there's 80% left to discover about them, about
mm.
recovery, about courses, about plight, about everything, how to get better. There's still 80% left to learn, which is a big number, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, coming back to Michael Bublé, sorry. So one of the biggest impacts on my brain injury is my memory. So my short-term memory is not very good.
Mm.
So I can remember, bizarrely, having worked as a sports journalist for 15, 20 years, I can remember obscure, useless sporting information from the 1990s, but I can't, for example, remember what I've had for breakfast this morning.
Right.
And that's the crazy thing about brain injuries, that
Yeah.
people often don't appreciate the difference between short-term and long-term memory.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I ask you, what did you have for breakfast? Any chance that it'll come to you, or does it not there until later on?
Well, this is where you have to develop what's called strategies in speech marks. You have to develop strategies to basically to navigate your day. And one thing I have to lean upon very much so is my phone calendar. So I remember a couple of years ago, so you have to develop the strategy of writing things down. And I
Mhm.
remember my wife saying to me, like, she was just randomly going through not going through my phone calendar, that sounds wrong, but she was like, I was mentioning my phone calendar, and she would say, she was kind of commenting, why have you got this written down in your phone calendar? Why are you possibly interested in what you've had for breakfast and when you've had breakfast? And I said, pure and simply, because my brain doesn't allow me to remember it. So
Mm.
it sounds very, very sad, but every day on my phone calendar, I write every single meal I've had throughout the day and when. And it came about because I literally could not remember what meal I'd had for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And therefore, I wasn't sure when to eat again.
Mm. Okay. So you remember to write it down, but you don't
Yeah.
remember what you ate. That's
No, that's
freaking
interesting,
nuts.
isn't it?
It is so nuts. I get what you're saying. Right? Everyone's fascinated about their brain after they realize they've got one, when they have a brain bleed, or when they have a stroke from an ischemic attack. So it's just completely ridiculous. But I get what you're saying. I like that strategy that you do write it down. And as a result of that, is that the only thing that you have to strategize to write down? I have a friend of mine. I ask because I have a friend of mine who's 48 now. When she was 21, she had a aneurysm burst in her brain, and as a result of
Wow.
that, still today, she writes down things every night before bed that she needs to remember in the morning,
Yeah.
and she just puts it on her nightstand, and she kind of laughs about it. And she tells us, I still write things down and all that type of thing. This is what I had to write the other day. And it might be the most bizarre, strange, obscure things, but sometimes she has
Yeah.
to make sure that when she wakes up, she knows she's waking up next to her husband. And it's just in that moment, once she knows that in the morning again, it's fine. But she did on her honeymoon, they were in the United States in Hawaii. She woke up next to a stranger and she was losing her shit, not realizing, oh, no, this guy's meant to be here and it's all good.
No, I can completely understand and relate to that because I mean, and one example I'll pull out is the film, the Guy Pearce film Memento.
Mm-hmm.
Such a brilliant film. Christopher Nolan directed. It was one of my favorite films anyway. I loved it. But then when I had my brain injury and the whole, I guess, journey or exploration of memory became more and more prominent, and it just became more and more fascinating about the sort of different types of brain injuries and therefore the different repercussions that you can have of a brain injury. Because, like, I think because whether it's in America or in Europe, everybody, it's a bit of a blanket term, brain injury. Like it, people think it covers just one thing or one disability or one visual effect, and it's just not. It's such a wide ranging spectrum of effects because, and that's what's so amazing about the brain is like depending on whereabouts in the brain, even like the left hand side, the right hand side, the front, the back, it just affects you in so many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not like saying my hand was injured. It's a completely different thing. Saying my brain is
Definitely.
injured. Which part, where, how severely,
Yeah.
for how long, it
Yeah.
just doesn't end. And then everyone's lobes are generally doing the same thing. However, some lobes are slightly operating differently at one point than another point of the other person. So there's never one. There's never, what do they say about strokes? I think they say they're like snowflakes. Not one of them is
Snowflakes. Yeah.
alike.
No,
So
two are the same.
yeah. So that's interesting. So what is your new career?
Well, I'm now working in a supermarket, which is not to be critical or downplay. For a start, I'm just incredibly grateful to be employed and have any job and have any income whatsoever. I mean, and that's one thing I've definitely taken or learned through my brain injury journey. It's just gratitude because it's like to be trusted to do a job is massive. One word I would kind of use or point out now is closure in terms of like because like I say I took redundancy. I chose to take redundancy in 2017 at the time because all the factors were all came together at the same time. But because I'm still an ambitious person and the fire within me of ambition still burns to try and be a sports journalist. Now, whether that is advisable or not, I don't really know, because like I said, my wife very much, there are times when I agree with her about this. She believes that my brain injury was caused by my career, which I completely take on board, because as we've just discussed, having working so many days and so many hours constantly is going to have an effect. So she can't really understand why I'm still chasing this unobtainable dream, if that makes sense. And I completely respect that viewpoint. But it's an individual thing. Like, you're still chasing. You can't really shelve or put to bed a dream that you've always had.
I'm going to throw my hat in the ring, give you a little bit of my thoughts on that. It's not about, I know your wife's concerned. She says, if he goes back, he's going to do 30 hours a day again, and he's going to work 7 days a week again, and he's going to get unwell and he won't be with us. And it's like, she's thinking, well, that's not worth it. Pretty cool. I get that. And then on the other hand, you're going, well, it's my career, it's my dream, it's my love, it's my this, it's my that. And that is legit too. The question is the balance. Can you find a balance to do it? And if you don't do it as a career, maybe you can just become a sports journalist on TikTok. There's a ton of people following their dreams on TikTok in the sense that they're reporting obscure things or important things or whatever they want. Some of them are bloody reporting things that are not necessary for humanity to know. But a TikTok that you're doing that expresses your love for one of the sports or for multiple of the sports is a great way to express yourself and do that and interact with people in that way at your pace with your own content without anyone going, well, that's not good enough, do it again, or this is not enough, do it again. And the best part about it is you could do it from your armchair. You could just watch the bloody thing and then report on what you saw from your TV. And I'm like, how is that? That would be amazing to be able to do, so that you're expressing yourself in that creative way that reporters can get to do about your passion without putting yourself at risk. And you just never know what might come of it. I think it's just a gentle way to do something and keep yourself in the loop of that industry.
And it's strange, and this is again connected to my memory issues, because like if I watch a football match, a soccer match or a rugby match on television, I obviously cannot remember what happened or the final score or who won, for example. And so like I said before, I live and die by my phone calendar. I really do. And I'll be watching the game and I'll be making notes about who scored first, how they scored, when they scored. So I'm kind of doing like a detailed match report in my calendar. I'm just not doing it to be paid, that's all. But I'm only doing that as a memory strategy kind of thing. But I think what's difficult is it's this classic what they call looking over the garden neighbour's fence analogy, because like my best man, who I went to university with, he is now a fantastic sports journalist and he's doing really, really well. And it's that classic, looking over the garden neighbour's fence of like, oh, well, look what they're doing. And because we trained at the same time, we got the same qualifications at the same time. And if you think of like two trains that leave the station at the same point at the same time, but yet they've just gone on different paths or different journeys. And it's very unfair to compare the two situations and say, well, I should be here, I should be at the same point he's at, because there's been various differences, such as having a brain injury. But I just think it's human nature to just compare two similar situations.
It's definitely human nature. It's not useful in your situation to compare to him.
No.
Your gratitude probably serves you better. Supporting him in his dreams and getting him to express himself in that way, and you kind of living a part of your dream through him would be great. But also, there's no reason why you can't convert those memories that you're writing down into a sports report and just report them into a TikTok account. Like, absolutely no reason. And I know you're not getting paid for it, but it's allowing you to express yourself. I compare myself. I lost 10 years of income, before I was able to get back to work in the capacity that was making me a decent income. My my incident, the first one happened in February 2012. And
Wow.
and to lose 10 years of income in my prime is a hard thing to get my head around, because I also sometimes, when I'm having a shit day, compare myself to somebody else and go, oh, look how far they've come, and look what they're doing, and look what they're earning, and look how much their business has grown. And it's such a stupid place for me to be in. It does nothing for me except make me feel worse. And it's like, and it's like, I'm kind of doing this. I'm not happy for where they are because I'm not there as well. And it's such a terrible thing, as if I'm not happy for my mates doing well and having an amazing business and getting rewarded for all the effort that they've put in. I was getting rewarded too, and I was flying. And thankfully, they don't have something in their head that bloody caused them to be unwell. I did. And that's really, it's, I find myself there, but it's like, it's not really me when I get into that state. It's somebody else who I don't recognize and I do not like. And I have to remind myself that again, I've got a lot to be grateful for. I've made it to the other side. I'm still living with my deficits quite functionally and quite well. They do impact me every single day, but that doesn't and that should be all that I'm focusing on, this new version of myself. And you know, I had this desire to express myself for very many years before I had a podcast, and I was always afraid to say what I thought because people would criticize it, and then I felt like what I had to do was defend myself. But you don't really have to defend yourself. You just have to speak your truth and allow that to come out. And if you notice something, bring it up, have the guts to bring it up, and then to defend and to defend your thoughts from a point of view of like, they're my thoughts. What you think matters too. We don't have to agree, but I do have to express them, especially if I'm expressing them in a positive light, and I'm not just shitting on somebody for the sake of shitting on them. I would never do that. So the podcast allowed me to be that guy that I'm describing to you on the TikTok. It allowed me to be the guy who gets to express himself every single week with people from around the globe who I've never ever would have had the opportunity to meet before, who have got a lot of things in common with me. And it's bringing me a sense of satisfaction that I cannot describe. And I never would have had it if it wasn't for the stroke.
Yeah. I mean, one of the many, many cliche phrases that come to my mind or that I use is recognizing achievement or appreciating achievement. So something for you yourself personally that you will see as huge, as massive, might not be as big or as important to somebody else. As Joe blogs in the street, you know, the stranger you just met, something might not be as important to them, but it is huge to you. I mean, such as, for example, like, you know, I was told I'd never walk again. So therefore, I now do quite a lot of running. And in 2018, I ran the London Marathon.
That's awesome. I would never bloody do it, but yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. But in the last week or so, I've genuinely signed up to more half marathons and full marathons.
Or within
Because
the
it's
UK?
that, yeah, within the UK, yeah. Because it's that kind of like, it's not just stubbornness. It's not like somebody saying, you can't do ABC, therefore you're going to do it out of spite and out of stubbornness. It's not that at all. It's about choice. Or freedom of choice. So, like, I take no pleasure in the fact that, and it's going to sound really arrogant to say, I've defied doctors.
Mm-hmm. That's a good statement, mate.
By them saying you'll never walk again, and I've run a marathon. So therefore, I mean, for example, like this last week, I've been out for 3 big runs, sort of 5K, 10K. And like I say, you just appreciate it
Mm-hmm.
so much more.
Yeah. I never appreciated running when I could properly run. I did do, because of, fitness and all that kind of stuff and trying to stay healthy. I used to run 5Ks every Sunday on the treadmill because I hated running outside. So when I got to rehab, one of the first things they asked me what you wanted to do, what were the goals that I had, and one of them was to run, but my run was to be across the road so that I don't get hit by a car. That's as far as I wanted to run. I never once said I want to run a half a marathon or a marathon or get back on the treadmill. But I know why you appreciate it, because your legs weren't working properly together beforehand. And it's like, man, they do now. So yeah, this is really cool. Of course it's cool. And that's great. I do have a similar feeling of gratitude about all the things that I can do. Absolutely. And I think that's important. And if you can be grateful, that really helps to shift you from focusing on all the things that happened, that stroke's done to you or taken away from you. Because there can be a lot of those. And I think although they need to be focused on from time to time, I think they shouldn't be at the forefront of someone's mind all the time. They should definitely be just something that we go to every once in a while from the perspective of trying to improve the situation. That's my reason for going to those places. And when I start comparing my life to somebody else's, I have every blessing. And it's like, why would I focus on the one thing that they have that I don't, to make myself feel bad about it? It's just nuts.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah. So when's your next marathon?
Well, I've got 2 half marathons that I've signed up for, which once you've done a full marathon, is like half marathon is nothing really, is it? But no, it wasn't just me. Like, my sister-in-law, who's amazing, she ran a marathon for the same charity. And one of my wife's friends ran a marathon. In fact, she ran 2. She ran London and she ran New York as well. So because of me, and that's not trying to be big-headed, but like 3 other marathons have been ran.
Wow, the crazy people.
And like X, Y, and Z, thousands of pounds have been raised.
Yeah.
Because of my story, because of my plight, which is just fantastic.
That's a great way to express gratitude, or the meaning behind your ability to walk or to run. That's a great way to channel that energy and to make it not only about you but also about other people. That's awesome. I love it.
I mean, it's this phrase that my wife came up with, which, if I've said it already, then I apologize for repeating it, which is, don't focus on the positives, don't dwell on the negatives.
Yeah.
That really hit a chord with me. Yeah, that really hit a chord with me, because it's that kind of haves versus have-nots kind of thing.
Yeah, I hear you. So, the situation with the emotional, with your emotions that you're not able to manage sometimes. How do other people that you've never met that don't understand deal with that? Because I reckon it would make a lot of people feel uncomfortable at the beginning before they get to know you.
And that's exactly the right word, uncomfortable. Because I mean, for example, like, it's always the most emotive situations that when it rears its ugly head. So, for example, when I got married, I mean, I've never been so dehydrated in my life. I literally wept throughout the whole ceremony.
Is that a risk of being highly emotional? You get to dehydrate from crying.
Yeah. So it's anything. So any emotive situations like getting married, which is obviously a once in a lifetime situation. Oh, and when our son was born, I
Yeah.
wept so much.
I hope it is a once in a lifetime thing for you, mate, because I know people that have been married 4 times. And could you imagine how much liquid they would lose if they were in your situation?
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
Do you know what? It's really interesting you raise this on a sort of side tangent because, like, we as brain injury survivors, I don't know if you find this, Bill, but like, we become focused and almost bordering on obsessed with certain things like statistics or facts that you learn or hear about brain injuries. And my current one at the minute is that 85% of marriages involving brain injury break down. I seem to be very, very focused on that. And that is just, I mean, like, we're always hearing in the media or TV programs about how 50% or 1 in 2 marriages don't work, whether that's in America or the United Kingdom or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's high on its own. But then you throw in a brain injury involved and it shoots up to 85%.
Wow.
I mean, that's just crazy. And it's once I heard that statistic, that fact, it then made me look at all the people I've met through my brain injury journey, because this fantastic charity that I ran the marathons for called Headway UK, the national brain injury charity, who are amazing. All the brain injury survivors I've met through them, I kind of, it sounds patronising to say, I kind of looked around the room. I loved talking to them all. But a lot of them were sort of telling me these tales of broken marriages or separated marriages. And I just kind of thought, it's just such a shame.
Yeah. I don't know. I have a theory on that, is that the marriage is probably on the way out. Anyway, it's just that the incident that needed to trigger it hadn't happened yet, and then it happened. And then it's like I met a few people who have gone through that over the years as well. And one of the examples was, this wasn't somebody who I interviewed. One of the examples was that the person who left the stroke survivor, the wife, left because he was an asshole anyway, and she was sure as shit not going to be around to wipe his ass for him. Her words. And that's like, okay. I can kind of grasp that. I can kind of get that situation. And then the other unfortunate situations of it being so triggering to the spouse that the spouse doesn't have the resources, the skills, the tools, the resilience to hang around and deal with such a dramatic situation because it would negatively impact their life and they decide to leave. And I think that that's a great reason to leave a marriage, because if you're going to be that bad at going through what the other person is experiencing, you're not going to be offering any support or help. You may as well not be there. So some of it, I think, is positive, absolutely positive. Although it appears not ideal, the last thing you want to be is in a marriage where one person resents the other, and then one person doesn't have the skills to support their partner or to manage to deal with it themselves. So many marriages are not dealing with day-to-day life. Imagine throwing in a brain injury and all the stuff that comes with that.
Definitely.
And if some people don't see it as their responsibility or their right or their role to be the caregiver for another person for the entirety of the rest of their lives and putting everything that they've ever dreamed of on hold. So at the beginning, I was like you, I was very shocked by the statistic, but I was also concerned about how can somebody be so harsh or so cruel, or but sometimes I think it's the best thing that they can do is decide not to hang around there.
I think not just us as brain injury survivors, but the general population just don't appreciate what, how can I phrase this, the strain it will put on a marriage. Because, for example, the way it was explained to me was you literally change overnight into a different person. So, and there's a great online, I can't remember if it was another podcast or something else I follow called The Identity Thief. It was a really interesting blog. And so you have a brain injury and your identity is stolen. And I can completely relate to the fact that somebody, male or female, has fallen in love with a certain person, but then suddenly overnight that person is literally dead or is literally not there anymore. And they wake up the next day and there's a completely new person that they have to not only get to know, but somehow try and find a way to fall in love with again. And it's just a completely different person. So I can completely understand why so many marriages have failed involving a brain injury, because it's literally a different person.
Yeah. And and the person on the other end of it, the person who hasn't had that injury, has to grapple with their own identity, the identity of the person who's changed, the joint identity of what it was like to be married and what that meant and what their combined dreams were and all that type of thing. Yeah, it's such a tough thing, and I'd like to make people feel better about it. If people listening and watching this have been through a divorce after the stroke, hopefully they haven't taken it personally. It says more about perhaps the strength of the marriage anyway, and then maybe it says a lot about where the other person was at. So I think for some people to leave, I feel like it's like a selfless decision as well, because they've put themselves first, and so few caregivers do that, and then they become collateral damage, and it's so terrible to be involved and to see people who need help and support and their caregivers pass before them or become mentally unwell as a result of what it is that they have to step up supposedly to do. So marriage is one of those things. I know that in the Greek faith, the Orthodox Christian faith, we don't get up and say till death do us part or any of that stuff. And I don't know if that phrase till death do us part makes it harder on people who have gone through a marriage ceremony that makes them say that during their vows, because that's all they say. They just say till death do us part. They don't say till death do us part and for disability and for all this other stuff Do you know, like, I feel like that those words can potentially impact people to stay in a marriage where perhaps they would rather not be there, and then they become a lesser person, and that impacts everybody negatively. Now,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not
the word.
saying. I was going to say, I'm not saying that in my marriage, just because I didn't say till death do us part, we didn't take it as seriously. But um, I just feel that adds another layer of complexity. Although, you know, in our situation, we got married for the same reasons. We just didn't say those words. We didn't have to say them because they're part of our ceremony. So it's a real, it's a conundrum, man. And I'm just hoping that people feel okay about doing the best that they can with the resources they have and the information they have at the time. You know, not everybody can navigate this beautifully. It's just not possible.
Mm. I mean, I'll just pick you up on one word in particular, which is spot on, which is caregiver, because it's about roles, the roles you play in life and the roles you play in a relationship. And suddenly you've gone from being for example, if it's a female, girlfriend or fiance or wife, and suddenly you're thrust and you're thrown into this chasm, this world. You're now suddenly not just a girlfriend, fiance, wife, you're now a caregiver. And that is such a massive, heavy term, that is, where you have literally got to, the responsibility lies with you to look after absolutely everything to do with this other person. And sometimes this other person, your boyfriend or husband, might be older than you, for example, they might be more successful than you, they might earn more money than you, but suddenly you're the caregiver for that person. You've got to look after them in every single aspect of life, which is quite a daunting prospect. And that's going to weigh heavy upon the caregiver, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a statistic, 85% of marriages, you know, that don't work out. But I think, you know, we can make statistics look as bad as we want them to, and we can make them tell the story that we want to tell them. I think that's a far more deeper and complex conversation about that. One worth having, but a statistic generally that seems that high in potentially being, you know, a negative thing. I think it's still worth, sort of paying attention to and pricking our ears up, you know, and kind of getting us to the point of saying, okay, why is that? How can we improve that?
Yeah.
Do we need to improve that? I don't know. It's such a complex.
Improve that?
Yeah, it's such a complex topic. I don't think there's enough resources. Governments wouldn't have the resources to allocate to every every illness that humans can have, and say, okay, cancer guys, they get this much for marriage counseling, and stroke survivors, they get this much for marriage counseling. I don't think there's enough support in any way, shape, or form. And the worst part about it is the stroke survivors usually don't have enough resources to put towards all of the services that they need to get through, or to come out of it less, I don't know, less impacted, I suppose. How can you? It's such a terrible way to find that you're, for me, it was such a terrible way for me to find out that I am incapable of managing my day-to-day, and now I've got to manage my day-to-day with stroke. And I say I was incapable is because all I knew was how to work a lot of hours, and I hadn't yet mastered the art of being a better father, being a better husband, being a better son, a better brother, a better friend. It was something that I aspired to, but I wasn't doing a lot of work to get to that point because I didn't know where to start. And I felt like I was lacking some life skills. At 37, I was trying to improve myself and be better. But then when you're lacking just life skills, generally speaking, because you're still a bit naive or wet behind the ears or afraid to take on new challenges or do things differently, and then you're thrust into the stroke world, then you really work out how inadequate you are and how unable you are to navigate life, because no one's ever taught how to navigate stroke, and God forbid they ever get to find out.
I don't know if this is a phrase that's used much in America, but over here it gets used a lot in brain injury, which is sink or swim. So you literally get, like you say, you get thrust into a situation and you have the choice. You can either sink or you can literally swim. You can either thrive. Or one thing we came up with was thrive, not just survive.
Yeah, that's a great thing to aim for. Tell me a little bit about your son. I'll see if I can make you cry a little bit more. I knew I could get you to cry. I'm so mean. How old is he?
Well, it's his birthday in 2 days.
Wow, that's awesome.
And he's going to be 5.
That's such a cool age. 4, 5, 6. It's such a brilliant age.
But this is the thing, like, brain injury is, how can I express this correctly? Like, brain injury is obviously the hardest thing you'll ever go through. But then that is met or confronted with, like, the best thing, which is parenthood. And being a parent is hard enough for anybody. But to do it with a brain injury is even harder. And like I'll give you the most obvious example, which is changing nappies.
Yeah. You got out of it, right?
Well, no, my wife was incredible. I would say hand on heart, I'm sure she'd agree. She changed the majority of them. But I did my best, the messy nappies. I never shied away, shall we say.
Yeah.
But it was, because, and this is another thing about brain injuries, is how they affect you in 2 different ways, both the mental or hidden ways or the physical ways. And it's, again, what I found really interesting. And this is absolutely no disrespect to anybody else that's had a brain injury, but like, if you're in a wheelchair or if you have a cane or something like that, somebody can look at you or see you and they can see there's clearly a physical disability there. Whereas someone like me, and to use this phrase again, limbo or purgatory, where you're in the middle of 2 worlds, where you're in the middle of the able-bodied world and the disabled world, and you're right down the middle of it, of like, you're neither one or the other. So it's like this word that this such a heavy word that we've discussed a lot, which is disabled. And my wife's often said to me, and we've talked about it, it's like, do I consider myself disabled? And it's like, because it's such a big definition, it's really difficult to sort of say. And that's not even taken into the consideration, the governmental benefits aspect and things like that. It's purely a personal thing. Like, do I consider myself disabled? And it's like, well, on paper, yes, because I've technically had a brain injury. I've technically had a stroke. I've had a blockage to my brain. There's been a blockage of oxygenated blood reaching my brain. So that, which is on paper, the definition of a stroke. And so, again, the definition of disability is that. But it's just like, maybe it's a personal thing. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. It's just like, because it's such a heavy loaded word, a heavy loaded term. It's all of that it encompasses and incorporates.
Yeah. The thing about the word disability, it suggests inability. And
yes.
And that's the part that I don't like about it, because there's lots of people who are very, very abled in wheelchairs, you would know, participating in sports all over the world. There's an amazing lady who I've interviewed on the podcast, who is somebody who experienced a stroke, and she lives with left side or right side, well, perhaps it was hemiplegia. I don't know exactly the term, but it means that her left leg, or one of her legs, I'm going to call it the left because I forget which one it is. Her left and leg and her left arm have a lot of. She's unable to use them fully, right? And
Yeah.
she's a power lifter. She doesn't use that side of her body to lift these ginormous boulders and pull trucks and semi-trailers and all that kind of stuff. But she's
Amazing.
but she's doing it. So she has, if you look at her, you know, the definition of disability applies. You'd be able to say, well, you know, she appears disabled, but she's far from that. She has found a completely different way to do that. And then the wheelchair basketball guys or the wheelchair tennis guys and gals,
Yeah.
you know, and even the athletes, the in the Paralympics that run track and field and all that kind of stuff, that whole bunch of people are so abled, and yet the best word that we came up with as a society is disabled.
Yeah.
So I know what you're saying about where you sit. You sit from that space where people recognize that you're got a challenge and you're struggling with a physical limitation. And that other place where you appear like you don't suffer from a physical limitation, like as if the physical limitation is the only thing we can suffer from. There's also that mental limitation that people experience in life, generally speaking, you know, through mental health issues. And then what a stroke could do to somebody's mental state. And that invisible disability side of that is the part that I think you're describing. It's that I appear normal on the outside, and everyone concludes or assumes that I am, and that's okay. But I live with my deficits every single day. Just nobody can see them. That's pain on my left side. That's tightness. That's a limp when I get tired. And not a limp that anyone can see, only the one that I can feel and notice it dragging me to the left. And I have lately, I've become aware that I have a vision issue, a very small one, which my left eye does something weird sometimes at certain amounts of sunlight when I'm wearing sunglasses. It kind of flickers in the top left-hand corner, and it makes my eyeball feel weird. I've only just maybe now associated it to perhaps it's part of the left side deficits that I have.
Yeah.
And that's how it's being expressed in my eye. So it's a real conundrum, is how does it really matter that people don't understand and that we have to re-educate them all the time? Do you try to re-educate them? Do you try and bring people on board to get a grasp of what you're experiencing? Is that necessary?
Well, this is one of the reasons why we did. I mean, I started a blog. I mean, I'm far too old to understand or really know what an online blog is, really. That was never really my thing. But because my wife, who's younger than me, and a lot cooler than me, you know, she has a finger on the pulse of the sort of modern, I guess, technology, whether it's online, whatever. And she's really into her blogs and her vlogs, which is fantastic. And she encouraged me to start a blog, which was great because of my memory issues. And like I touched upon before, that I couldn't remember that day. And we used to do this thing where, like, we'd get to the evening and we'd get into bed and it'd be like kind of looking back on the day that had just occurred. And as strange as it sounds, and it's really difficult to understand or comprehend for anybody that doesn't understand this world of brain injury. I could not remember, like we said before, I couldn't remember what I had for breakfast. I couldn't remember much of that day. So she encouraged me to do an online diary. And And that's how it started, basically. It became an online diary. And also because we were living in a part of the country that was far away from my family, and they'd often be ringing us or contacting us and saying, "Oh, what have you been up to this day? What have you been up to recently?" And it was just like, no disrespect, it was like a really easy way of saying, "Well, have a look at the blog."
I've got no idea.
Yeah. Well, no, it's just a good idea. If they wanted to find out, then look at the blog, and that's a good way for them to touch base with us in a way. But no, I mean, but it also helped me because another phrase that was stressed upon us by doctors and specialists was brain injuries love routine. So your memory is really poor,
Yeah.
but what helps it is by having that structure, having that routine. And like I was always somebody that I wouldn't say I rejected routine, but it's like, for example, like I didn't like having the same meal every Monday night, every Tuesday night, because I like to have a bit of variety.
Mm.
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say routine was boring, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't say I embraced it as much as I do
Mm.
now. Whereas now it is crucial. So I do tend to be like,
Yeah.
oh, what did I have for breakfast? Oh, I can't remember. Therefore, have the same thing for breakfast every single day, because therefore it trains your brain into remembering what you've had for breakfast, because it's that routine again.
I see what you're saying. So your blog, is it from reporter to supporter? Is that the one?
That's yeah, from reporter to supporter.com. Yeah.
Okay. From reporter to supporter. I'm trying to bring it up.
Yeah.
It's not coming up.
No, we stopped it a few years ago, basically when other things took over, like becoming parents. But no, it was a great way of
At the beginning.
chronicling or detailing our lives or my life with a brain injury. But
Yes.
it got nominated for an award, which we were just blown away for, because we never went into it to search or seek out awards or recognition. It was just purely an online diary to keep track of my memory, really. So
Okay.
any I guess attention, to use a word, we got from it was hugely appreciated. It really was.
Yeah, right.
But I really enjoyed doing it because I struggled to remember what I was doing each week. It was like if I did the same thing every Monday, then that somehow got ingrained into my brain. So we used to set aside whether it was Monday or Tuesday, it became like my blog day kind of thing. And that became set in the routine. And it was those little strategies or techniques which really, really helped with my memory.
Yeah. So me suggesting that you get onto TikTok and do a TikTok thing, that means you actually didn't know what I was talking about earlier. You got no idea what TikTok is. If you don't even know what a blog is, you wouldn't know what TikTok is. You don't do social media, do you?
No, I do social media, but I would say at the age of 39, turning 40 this year, I'm far too old for TikTok.
Nah, you're not. I get what you're saying. You don't have to do the other things that other people do on TikTok, but I love what you're saying. I think you've got a lot to offer, is what I'm saying. You've got a lot to offer, and the fact that you're a reporter and you have a way with words anyway, so you'd be able to express things that other people can't express or don't know how to express as effectively as you. You've got that skill. Were you a live TV reporter? Were you a newspaper reporter?
I was a newspaper reporter.
Yeah. See?
That's very kind of you. The things you just said, that's very appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely true. I mean, I say that because I've started to write a book recently, and I realized how terrible I am at putting things in words. It's not that I don't know how to express myself; it's that I can't concentrate long enough to put a good effort in on a daily basis, so that I can have it done by a period of time. I can't meet a deadline if my life depended on it. But I'm 7 chapters into a 10-chapter book. It's going to get
Wow.
edited and read by other people, and they are going to help me out with it, because I can't. There's no way I can do it on my own. And that's cool. That's all good. But I learned a lot because I now read books, and when I read, I'm not reading as a reader. I'm reading them as an author to see how other
Yeah.
people have written.
Yeah.
And I learned something interesting about Hemingway and how he revolutionized the world of books by providing a similar approach to writing a book or telling a story, to the same way that he used to write for a newspaper because he was a newspaper reporter.
Mm.
And he would use the same format of writing a newspaper article. He would use that for writing a book. And that made the book
Yeah.
extremely easy to read,
Yeah.
extremely easy to understand, and engaging because his words and sentences were all short, sweet, and to the point. And I think he described it as there was never a wasted word in his books. And one of the things that he did was he would go back and proofread and read and reread and rewrite again and again and again until it was just a really amazing, amazing combination of passages to express what it was that he was trying to express about his character or about
Yeah.
a particular scene. So I think what I'm saying about you is that you would have that ability to really get a message across, whatever that message was. So when you've got nothing better to do and you've got heaps of time up your sleeve, maybe get back onto the world of social media or blogging, who knows?
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to do that because, like, for example, so many journalists, newspaper journalists, go on to become authors. So, for example, like my favorite writer was George Orwell, who
Yes.
wrote 1984, and
Yeah.
he started off as a journalist for the newspaper in this country called The Observer in the 1940s, and yet he went on to be an author as well and do 1984 and do Animal Farm. And like I say, he's always been my favorite writer as well. And I think when you have that skill set of writing, of learning how to write, then it's obviously going to lend itself or transcend itself to another world, such as writing books. And I would love to write a book. This is going to sound, this was kind of my idea for a book. And if this sounds stupid, by all means say it's stupid. But like, I was always really interested in the world of brain injury in terms of like, there's a patient in a bed and yet there's this whole world going on around them. So there's like a family and friends playing on this idea of, brain injuries don't just affect one person, they affect lots of people. And yet all these people are around this bed, all these lives going on. And I liken it to the planets in the solar system, how they're sort of circling or orbiting the sun, and the sun is like the patient. And that's not to be sort of big-headed or, egotistical or anything like that, but that how all these paths are going on around and they're all following and treading these paths. And I find it really interesting. There's all these sort of lines or train lines of journeys that are going on.
I love it, mate. I love it. I'll tell you why I love it, because it's exactly what I've thought about a lot of times, how life still occurs around the stroke survivor, regardless of
Yeah,
what they're going through and how terrible their
yeah,
time is. Life doesn't get to go on hold, and you don't slow things down. Things just remain frantic and they continue around you. And
yeah.
I say that because we had that experience. Uh, I had a bleed in 2012 in February, and then I had one in March 2012. And then in
Wow.
2014, I had a third bleed, and that bleed led to my brain surgery. And 2 weeks before my brain surgery, my mother-in-law passed away.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thanks. So it's that thing that you just described is that thing that I've thought of a lot of times. It's how the in the periphery, people are still going through life every single day, the ups, the downs, the joys, the sadness, and it's often it's often a missed. It's an opportunity missed to share what it is that they're going through while
Yeah,
dealing with the stroke survivor. Because
yeah,
coming from a Greek family, we had 75,000 people at hospital every single day that I was unwell, calling, ringing, checking in, and then going back to their daily lives. And then at the same time, having me in their thoughts all the time. And then having my wife in their thoughts all the time. And then my children. And it's exactly what you described. That idea that you described in my mind is what I've often contemplated is how do other people coexist with a stroke survivor
yeah.
in that moment? And
Mm.
I think it'd be a brilliant story to tell.
Well, we should work on it together if you're up for it.
Well, I'm up for it. I'm not sure what I'm going to offer, but yeah, you tell me, and I might be able to assist. Let me get through this book, which I've been writing for about a year now,
Sure.
and it'll be done soon. And I hope that when it's done, it's really going to be successful, not from the point of view that it needs to make money,
No.
that I feel that it's actually valuable and it's good to
Mm.
read and it's worthwhile, and that somebody's going to pick it up and go, my God, what a great insight. And as a
Yeah.
result of that, uh, it supports other stroke survivors is the main reason why I wrote it, you know? Um,
Yeah.
and, and once that's done, you never know. I might take you up on that offer. We can co-write
That,
something or co-create something. It'd be lovely. How good would that be?
that that'd be brilliant because it's kind of the voice of strokes or brain injury survivors coming from brain injury survivors. I mean,
Yeah,
who's going to know the world of brain survivors, brain injury better than a brain injury survivor themselves?
yeah, yeah. Completely agree. So, tell me about, as we come to the end of this podcast episode, tell me about your strategy after this interview. So, we're going to record this interview, and then we're going to edit it, and I'm going to get it up in a couple of weeks. Are you going to remember that this was recorded, and will you listen back to it to remember what it was that we discussed?
Or I'm going to have to because, for example, with all the best will and intentions, I'm sat here right now with a pad of paper and a pen, fully intending to write notes on everything that's going to be said tonight. But for some reason, I've just not felt compelled to write anything down.
Yeah, maybe because you've got
So
a recorded version of them.
I guess that's true. But like, so when I look back on my days from the day before, I'll again live and die by my phone calendar. So I've had a pretty full on day today, which has been fantastic. I was saying to my mum earlier, I love having busy days. So I'd rather be busy
Mm,
than not busy. I'd rather be doing stuff than not doing stuff. And so I'll look back on my phone calendar tomorrow and see, blimey, I had a podcast interview last night. That was really cool. I mean, you see the event in your calendar, but what it doesn't convey is, say, for example, feelings or emotions.
uh,
As in, like, so it's pretty blank, podcast interview, 10 o'clock till 11:15. But I'm tempted to write in now, actually, when this is finished, and say, really enjoyed it, had a really, really good time. And that's where the kind of blurring of the lines or the black and white is interesting because it
yeah,
doesn't convey emotion.
it's just matter of fact. Yeah,
Yeah, it's matter of fact, yeah.
yeah, there was a podcast interview that we participated in. So, when you hang out with friends at the local pub or at dinner or at a restaurant, do you take a pen and pad with you there as well?
When I have my phone, and I do tend to write a lot of phone notes, even if it's just conversations or jokes, inside jokes, or a lot of it is like dates or not anniversaries, but like if I need to remember something, I will write it down in my notes, in my
Mm.
phone notes. And like, again, it's something my wife's picked me up on before about, why have you written this phone note about this? It's so irrelevant. It really is. But in that particular moment, it may have been relevant or important to me. I won't be able to explain why it's important, but in that moment, I felt it was.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it, mate. I've absolutely had a blast chatting to you, getting to know you, and hearing your story. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast, reaching out, and yeah, coming on, man. It was really cool to have a chat with you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I hope people find it useful.
I'm sure they will. Absolutely. We spoke about some seriously deep stuff, and we spoke about some stuff that wasn't so serious. So I think it's going to be something there for everybody. And best of luck for your son's birthday celebration in the next couple of days. And
Thank you.
is it going to be a big party?
Well, we're all going down because they live in the south coast and we live in the Midlands. There's a lot of us, or a lot of my family. We're all going down en masse. There's about 9 or 10 of us all going down, so we're going to bombard them with so many people. So it's going to be great. And I've got literally just to my right now, I'm just looking at the pile of birthday presents I've got wrapped for him.
He's getting a pile of birthday presents.
And it's all dinosaur related because he loves dinosaurs.
Awesome, mate. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Will. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode. To learn more about my guests, including their links, and to download a full transcript of the entire interview, please go to recoveryafterstroke.com/episodes. If you'd like to support this podcast, the best way to do it is to leave a 5-star review and a few words about what the show means to you on iTunes and Spotify. And if you are watching on YouTube, comment below the video. Like this episode, and to get notifications of future episodes, subscribe and hit the notifications bell. Now, sharing the show with family and friends on social media will make it possible for people who may need this type of content to find it easier, and that may make a massive difference to someone that is on the road to recovery after their own experience with stroke. Thank you again for being here and listening. I really appreciate you, and see you on the next episode.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamas. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.